Hello, and welcome to my channel. I'm Margaret, and here I share real-life stories from my friends at the nursing home. The moment they sat me at the overflow table behind the speaker's booth, with my back to the dance floor and no wineglass in sight, I knew exactly who was pulling the strings. It wasn't my daughter Lauren. She's spineless, bless her. She wouldn't have dared. No, this had Brandon's fingerprints all over it. The table was round, draped in cream linen like the others, but unlike theirs, it was stacked with folding chairs and held exactly four guests. Me, a man with a nasal cannula, a woman who brought her own Tupperware, and a cousin from Michigan no one had seen since the Reagan administration. Table cards read, family. Ours said, special guests. I looked across the room and found Brandon, smiling like the best man in a toothpaste commercial. He wore that smug expression men get when they think they've successfully erased you without leaving fingerprints. He raised his glass in a toast I wasn't part of. I raised a breadstick back. They thought I wouldn't make a fuss, that I'd quietly shrink into the wallpaper, take my roast chicken in silence, and disappear back into my condo with my walker and reruns of Murder, she wrote. They thought I was just a harmless widow. What they didn't know was that the harmless widow had just transferred $21 million into an offshore trust designed specifically for scenarios like this. My husband, Richard, God rest his beautifully paranoid soul, had worked in private equity and never trusted a soul. Before he died, he left me everything, with instructions, conditions, and ironclad protections. It's not that I think you'll be careless, he told me once. It's that I know the world thinks you will be. So when I saw Brandon smiling, I smiled back, because I wasn't angry, not yet. But I was taking notes. I wasn't always this cold. I was a nurse for 34 years, raised 3 kids, buried a husband, baked cookies for the church bake sale every December without fail. I hosted Thanksgivings, refereed tantrums, wiped more noses and egos than I care to count. And I adored my daughter Lauren. For years, I defended her when even her own siblings called her shallow. She's sensitive, I'd say. She's just trying to be her own person. But when she met Brandon, everything shifted. He came into our lives like a recruiter, always networking, always managing optics. He wore designer belts with visible logos and called himself an impact investor, which I later learned was code for nothing of real substance. He complimented me too much, too fast. Helen, you have such a presence. Helen, I'd love to pick your brain sometime. Helen, you remind me of my grandmother. She was also elegant and intimidating. He was collecting character references, and I gave him one. At first. The red flags started fluttering at full mast about 3 months before the wedding. I caught him pressuring Lauren into putting their new condo solely in her name, while he floated the idea that he managed their joint finances in exchange for relieving her of mental load. Lauren, of course, lapped it up. She's the creative one, he'd say. I handle the numbers. I didn't say anything, yet, but I updated the trust access list and moved my medical directives to a separate server, just in case. I was 72. I had survived childbirth in the 70s, bedpans in the ICU, and Richard's retirement project of trying to grill every meat known to mankind. I was not going to be erased at a wedding reception. 2 weeks after the wedding, Brandon invited me to brunch. Just me. Lauren was busy, he said. The server barely poured the coffee before he leaned forward and began his pitch. I've been thinking a lot about legacy lately, he said, like he was about to sell me a reverse mortgage. And I think your experience could really shape the foundation of something meaningful. I stirred my coffee. Is that so? He nodded. Financial independence for women in their golden years. We could build a structure around your story, your wisdom, your resources. I just need your signature to formalize the trust's integration into the structure. I tilted my head. You mean, sign over power of attorney? His face didn't flinch. He was too rehearsed. Temporarily. You'd retain full advisory status. We'd loop in a medical directive too, so there's continuity in case of emergency. It's just about smoothing operations. For the family, I smiled. Brandon, I said, stirring sugar into my coffee with unnecessary force. If this was a hospice and you were a social worker, I'd say that sounded like a deathbed acceleration clause. He blinked, then chuckled. I knew you were sharp. You have no idea, I said. I signed nothing, but I kept the printed packet he'd brought. On it, in faint watermark, were the initials of a shell corporation I recognized from Richard's old files. I took it home, scanned it, and called someone I hadn't spoken to in nearly a decade. Martha Breland, Richard's longtime lawyer, and the fiercest woman I knew who still used a fax machine. 3 days later, Martha and I sat in my den with herbal tea and a very different plan. Helen, she said, placing reading glasses on her nose. He's running a targeted elder fraud campaign. It's not just you. I've flagged this guy's name in 2 other cases, both involving widows in their 70s with substantial assets, both who handed over healthcare power of attorney in the name of family trust restructuring. What happened to them? One's in assisted living with no idea she ever signed anything. The other's money vanished after she voluntarily moved into a facility upstate. Her daughter can't find the assets. I felt a heat behind my ears that had nothing to do with menopause. What can we do? Martha leaned back. We record, we document, we expose. And when he comes back for the next ask, we give him a rope long enough to hang himself. I opened a drawer, pulled out a ceramic envelope holder, and placed Brandon's integration documents inside. Then I went to the bedroom, pulled open my closet, and took out the small mahogany box Richard had left me. Inside was the USB key, labelled in his handwriting, Helen, if they come for you. It took 2 months. 2 months of playing dumb, of sending Lauren birthday cards with impersonal notes, letting Brandon pitch his pilot project over coffee like we were collaborators, of letting him think I was warming up to the idea. During one of our meetings, I asked him what he planned to do with my assets once he had advisory oversight. He leaned in, all eager, like I was about to knight him. First, a liquidity event. Then I moved the bulk into a high-yield, tax-free shelter in the Caymans. I've got a contact there. Sounds fancy, I said. Oh, it is. You'd be helping so many people. They'll write about you in Forbes, Helen. I tapped the table once. That was the cue. Martha, listening through my jacket mic, got everything. He signed a follow-up email with an attached fake medical directive and instructions for a post-incident consolidation protocol, meaning he could take control if I so much as sprained my ankle. That night, we submitted the first packet to the feds, and I baked a pie. Because there are few joys quite like baking, while someone digs their own grave. The thing about predators is that they're lazy. They expect people not to read the fine print, not to ask questions, not to remember their own power. And when their mask finally slips, it doesn't just crack, it shatters. Brandon called me 2 weeks later, voice syrupy smooth. Hey, Helen, just following up on our little pilot, he said. I went ahead and drafted a simplified agreement. We could do a soft signature electronically, no need for anything official. We'll loop Lauren in after. Soft signature. No witnesses, no notary, no paper trail that could be held against him. It was exactly what Martha had predicted. I let my voice tremble just slightly. Oh, I'm not sure. I've been feeling a little dizzy lately. Maybe it's the meds. He pounced like a hawk. That's exactly why we need to get this finalized. You never know what might happen. I'll come by tomorrow with the papers, okay? Just a quick sign. I agreed. Then I baked banana bread and set the guest camera to motion record. When he arrived, he brought croissants and a tablet. Nice touch, I said, motioning to the flaky pastries. Poisoned? He laughed. Helen, come on. I gestured to the tablet. Let's hear the pitch again. He launched into it, polished, confident, like he was hosting a TED talk for sociopaths. He emphasized streamlining, modern stewardship, and trusted delegation. I let him speak for 8 minutes before I asked, and what if I don't want to delegate? He didn't miss a beat. Then someone else will. Click. That was the moment he broke character. The moment his mask slipped just enough for the camera and the feds to see who he really was. The next morning, I sent everything to Martha. 5 days later, 2 federal agents knocked on my door. I offered them shortbread and handed over a labeled folder. Brandon Gentry, financial predator. They stayed for 2 hours. One of them, a wiry man named Rodriguez with kind eyes, listened to everything I said with his hands folded tight. When I finished, he nodded once and said, "You're not the first. But you'll be the last he tries this with." Apparently, Brandon was already on a watch list, not under his own name, but as a known associate of 2 flagged shell companies funneling elderly assets into liquidity events abroad. I asked, "So what happens now?" Rodriguez looked at me and said, "Now we make you the face of something bigger." Lauren found out about the investigation a week later. She came storming into my condo like a hurricane in Louboutin heels. Her face was pale and tight, her eyes twitching with panic. "You reported my fiancé to the FBI?" I didn't rise from my chair. I just looked at her, calm and level. "He's your husband now, sweetheart. Keep up. You've destroyed our lives." I've intervened. There's a difference." She sneered. "He was building something important. You wouldn't understand that." "I do understand it," I said, standing slowly. "He was building a con, and you were the bait. Only you were too enamored with the staging lights to notice." She looked ready to slap me. Instead, she said, "You're just bitter and jealous. That's why Dad never made you executor. He didn't trust you." My smile went cold. "Oh, honey, your father didn't just make me executor. He made me the guard dog." Then I walked her to the door and locked it behind her. The news broke 3 weeks later. Brandon Gentry, CEO of Gentry Advisory Partners, arrested in connection with multi-state financial exploitation ring targeting elderly women. I got calls from reporters. I declined everyone. I didn't want to be a media symbol. I wanted results. But Martha had other plans. "We're going public," she said. "You don't have to be famous, Helen, but you will be heard." So we went to Washington. I sat before a Senate subcommittee and told them what it felt like to be treated like a relic, to be spoken over, erased, underestimated. I told them about the documents, the manipulations, the countless women with more years behind them than resources ahead, and how they were being hunted in plain sight. And then I gave them Richard's final card, the trust blueprint, the one designed specifically to outmaneuver predators like Brandon. It had taken Richard 2 years to build, and it worked like a fortress. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, holding up the folder, this isn't just estate planning. It's armor. That quote made headlines. I hated that part. But if it helped one woman see herself as worth protecting, then fine. Lauren didn't speak to me for 3 months. I mailed her the press clippings anyway. I also mailed her a copy of the formal divorce filing Brandon submitted from jail, apparently trying to rebrand himself as a wrongfully maligned family man before trial. I sent it with a note. You wanted a man who could make you famous. Congratulations. She didn't reply, but I heard from her brother that she moved in with an old friend and started therapy. People change when they hit rock bottom, or they dig. Time would tell. Back in my condo, I started getting letters from women in Arizona, Oregon, North Dakota, strangers who had seen my testimony and wanted to say thank you. Some had signed the wrong forms. Others had narrowly escaped men like Brandon. One woman wrote, "You made me feel like I wasn't just old, I was dangerous." I taped that one above my sink. And then I got a call from Rodriguez. You free next Tuesday? He asked. For what? They're giving you something. Bring nice shoes. I wore my best navy heels, the ones with the low block that still make a statement. Martha made me get a fresh blowout. She said if I was going to be standing beside the President of the United States, I couldn't show up looking like I just came from water aerobics. I didn't ask what the award was. I assumed some committee acknowledgement. A plaque. A polite handshake. What I didn't expect was the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I stood beside scientists, civil rights leaders, a retired astronaut. And there I was. Helen McCarthy, 72, retired nurse, widow, accidental warrior, blinking into the lights while my name was read aloud. For exposing a multi-million-dollar elder fraud ring and inspiring a federal policy shift on financial protections for senior citizens. People clapped. I didn't cry. Not then. But later, backstage, when they handed me the certificate and said, "You changed the outcome for thousands," my hand shook. Because all I'd wanted, truly, was to be seen. That same week, Congress passed the Elder Protection and Accountability Act. I didn't write it. I wasn't a politician. But Martha and I worked with the team behind it. We offered language, examples, loopholes we'd seen abused. They gave it teeth. Financial institutions would now be required to flag sudden power of attorney requests from individuals outside the family. State probate courts would receive new guidelines on late-life guardianship fraud. And best of all, a new federal task force, named after Richard, per Martha's quiet insistence, would open its doors that fall. The Richard J. McCarthy Center for Financial Justice. I sent the ribbon-cutting photo to Lauren. I wasn't trying to rub it in. I just thought she should know where the money went. She texted back 2 days later. I didn't know. I should have, but I didn't. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, but it was a beginning. Brandon, meanwhile, was not thriving. The trial was televised, not live, but excerpted. He showed up in a charcoal suit that didn't quite fit and tried to flash that same synthetic charm. But it didn't work on juries, especially not after the prosecutors played the audio of him saying, "Then someone else will." I watched the footage once. Only once. That sentence, the way he said it, was the clearest window into his soul. Cold, icy, as if people were assets and elders were just weak points in the system. He got 12 years without parole. I sent banana bread to the prosecuting team. Lauren visited me 2 weeks later. Not for long, just 20 minutes. She brought store-bought cookies, which she never used to do, and asked if she could sit. I made us tea, Earl Grey. She used to hate it, said it tasted like dirt and bergamot, but she drank it this time without comment. I wanted to believe him, she said, because he believed in me. No, I said. He believed in using you. She nodded slowly. I always thought Dad's money made you paranoid, but now I think it made you prepared. I smiled into my cup. He always said paranoia was just pattern recognition plus bad manners. She laughed. Not a full laugh, not yet, but a start. Then she said the hardest thing. Do you think you could ever forgive me? I looked at her, and for once, I didn't see my daughter as a broken piece of something I failed to hold together. I saw her as a woman, young, scarred, learning, just like I had been once. I think, I said, that forgiveness is less about forgetting and more about releasing the leash. She didn't speak again, but she stayed until the tea cooled. The following spring, I was invited to speak at the first ever Elder Justice Summit in Chicago. I said no, twice. Then Rodriguez called. Come on, Helen. You'll be in a room full of wolves pretending they're sheep. We need someone who bites. So I packed my heels, and I wrote a speech. Here's what I told them. We spend a lot of time telling older women to be gentle, to be graceful. But grace doesn't mean surrender. Grace means surviving the fire without becoming ash. I was a nurse for 3 decades. I held hands during last breaths and during first contractions. I know what endurance looks like. And I'll tell you this. We aren't fragile. We are folded steel. We are the generation that raised you, paid your debts, buried your secrets, and we are not going quietly. That quote ended up on a banner and a tote bag, which I find ridiculous. But I carry it anyway, just for the irony. That summer, Lauren called again. She said, I was thinking of applying to the new center. I've been working with a non-profit helping aging women transition out of abusive family arrangements. I let the silence stretch. I'm not asking for a shortcut, she added quickly. I just wanted to let you know. And I said something I hadn't said in years. I'm proud of you, Lauren. She cried, softly, and I didn't try to fix it. That fall, I started a monthly circle, not a support group, not therapy, just tea and sharp women. We meet in my den every 3rd Thursday. We call it the Hard Stops Club, as in, that's a hard stop, sweetheart. As in, no more, never again. It's the best thing I've done in years. We share stories, warn each other about scams, help review documents. Sometimes we just drink wine and watch reruns, but mostly we laugh, loudly, without apology, because surviving isn't enough. You've got to outlive them in style. The courtroom was packed. Not for Brandon's sentencing. That was done. 12 years. Federal time. But this was different. This was the civil suit. Restitution. And while the government had him behind bars, it was up to us, the victims, the survivors, to make sure he didn't crawl out with a dime to his name. There were 37 of us in total. All women. Most over 60. Some in wheelchairs, some in pearls, some in defiant hot pink. One brought her oxygen tank and a copy of The Art of War. No one spoke unless asked. We didn't have to. Our presence said it all. Brandon sat at the defense table with a court-appointed lawyer and an expression that flickered between bored and humiliated. He looked older, thinner, with less polish, less spin. His charm didn't belong to him anymore. It had been repossessed. My name was called. I stood. I'm not here for the money, I said. I'm here for the record, because someday someone will Google your name, maybe a future employer, maybe a daughter, maybe a fellow predator looking for a mentor. And I want the record to say, you were caught, you were stopped, and you were exposed by the very people you thought were invisible. I left the witness box to quiet applause. The judge awarded us everything we asked for, what little Brandon still had, cars, savings, business, assets, was liquidated. The court placed a permanent restriction on any future financial management licenses in his name. He would never consult again. And just like that, the book closed, not with vengeance, with accountability. The following week, I got a call from a woman named Rosalind in Missouri. She said her mother had nearly signed over guardianship to a business partner after reading about my case online. I stopped it just in time, she said. I told him, "You picked the wrong generation to mess with." I liked that. I put it on a note card and stuck it on my fridge, right next to my grandson's drawing of a dragon and a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt that says, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." Lauren and I went for a walk that October. The leaves had turned, crisp and amber. We were quiet for most of it, just the crunch of gravel and the occasional bark from a dog passing by. Then she asked, "Do you think Dad would be proud of how it all turned out?" I stopped walking. "He'd be proud of the fortress," I said. "But mostly, he'd be proud you came back." She looked at me, eyes glassy. "I don't feel like the same person." "You're not," I said. "That's the point." And I looped my arm through hers. Later that winter, I updated my will. Nothing dramatic. The trust remained. The protections stayed. But I added something new. A clause that earmarked a portion of my estate to support women over 60 who'd lost assets to coercion or manipulation. I named it the Helen Clause. Martha chuckled when she read it. "You always did like a theatrical title." I shrugged. I earned it. At the final Hard Stops Club of the year, we had a potluck. Deborah made lasagna, Yvonne brought carrot cake, I provided wine and snark. We played a game where we went around and said the boldest thing we'd done that year. Yvonne said, "I told my son he could keep the condo, but not the guilt trip." Clara said, "I changed my locks and didn't text back." Deborah said, "I took myself to dinner. Candlelit, alone, and I felt gorgeous." When it was my turn, I smiled. "I made peace," I said, "but I didn't make it cheap. I sleep better now. No more checking the doors twice. No more late-night flashbacks to Brandon's crocodile smile. No more feeling like a relic in my own life. Just quiet mornings, strong tea, phone calls with my grandson, long walks, good books, occasional indulgences, like those overpriced cinnamon candles from the gift shop I used to roll my eyes at. And every now and then, I pull out the mahogany box Richard left me. Inside now is something new, a note in my own handwriting. "Dear Helen, you didn't just survive. You changed the rules, and you look damn good doing it.